The grand ballroom of the Lexington Plaza Hotel was a controlled chaos of ladder scaffolding, folded linens, and the sharp scent of fresh roses being unpacked by the dozen. Samantha Reid stood in the center of it all, clipboard in one hand and phone in the other, her voice cutting through the noise with practiced authority. "Jake, the uplighting needs to be warmer. We're going for elegant autumn, not interrogation room," she called out to the young technician, balancing precariously on a stepladder near the far wall. Jake gave her a thumbs up and adjusted the gel filters. Across the room, Monica was arguing with the catering manager about table spacing. Sam could see the tension in her colleague's shoulders and made a mental note to step in if things escalated. This event had to be perfect. Not good, not impressive, perfect. The annual Harmony Foundation Gala was the crown jewel of their company's portfolio. 400 guests, a silent auction featuring a Picasso sketch, a keynote speech from a former ambassador, and most importantly, a $2 million sponsorship from the Baldini Foundation, the largest single donation in the event's 15-year history. Sam had been working on this project for 6 months. Every floral arrangement, every menu tasting, every seating chart revision had passed through her hands. At 28, she was the youngest senior event manager at Cooper & Associates, and she intended to keep climbing. This gala was her ticket to a promotion, maybe even a partnership track. "Sam, we've got a problem with the ice sculpture." Monica jogged over, her dark hair escaping from its bun. "The vendor says they can't guarantee the swan will last through cocktail hour in this room temperature. Tell them to add more dry ice to the base and position it directly under the AC vent," Sam said, without looking up from her checklist, "and get maintenance to drop the thermostat 2 degrees at 5 o'clock. Monica nodded and hurried off. Sam allowed herself a small smile. Problem-solving was her specialty. She thrived under pressure. The tighter the deadline, the sharper her focus. Her ex-boyfriend used to say it was her best and worst quality. She'd proven him wrong by building a career he'd never thought she was capable of. "Excuse me. I need to speak with the manager." The voice came from behind her, deep and authoritative. Sam turned, already preparing her professional smile, and found herself looking at a man who absolutely did not belong in her meticulously organized event space. He was tall, easily 6'4", with broad shoulders that strained against a plain black t-shirt that had seen better days. Faded jeans hung low on his hips, and his boots were the kind construction workers wore, scuffed and practical. Dark hair fell across his forehead in a way that suggested he hadn't seen a barber in weeks, and a shadow of stubble covered his strong jaw. Sam's smile faltered. The Lexington had strict security protocols. Vendors were supposed to use the service entrance, and this man looked like he'd wandered in from a job site. "The loading dock is on the west side of the building," she said, her tone polite but firm. "You'll need to check in with security and get a vendor badge before accessing the event space." The man didn't move. He simply looked at her, his dark brown eyes unreadable. There was something unsettling about the way he stood, perfectly still, perfectly calm, as if he had all the time in the world. "I'm not a vendor," he said. "Then I'm going to have to ask you to leave," Sam replied, her patience already wearing thin. She had 17 items left on her checklist, and only 3 hours until the first guests arrived. "This is a private event space. If you're looking for hotel services, the main lobby is through those doors." Behind her, Jake dropped a lighting cable with a loud clatter. Sam flinched but didn't turn around. She kept her eyes on the stranger, who still hadn't moved an inch. "Jake, focus please," she called over her shoulder. "We don't have time for accidents." The man tilted his head slightly as if studying her. It made Sam's skin prickle with irritation. "Look, I don't know who you are or what you want, but you're standing in the middle of a setup for a very important event," she said, her voice rising slightly. "An event for people who've invested significant resources and expect everything to be flawless. I can't have random people wandering through disrupting my team." She gestured toward his outfit with her clipboard. "Especially not people who show up looking like they're here to fix the plumbing. So unless you have official business, I need you to leave. Now." Monica had stopped mid-conversation with the florist and was staring at them. Jake had frozen on his ladder. Even the catering staff had paused their table settings to watch the exchange. The man's expression didn't change. He slipped one hand into his jeans pocket. Casual, unhurried. When he spoke again, his voice was quiet, but it carried across the ballroom with perfect clarity. My name is Vincenzo Baldini. I'm here to inspect the venue for the event my foundation is sponsoring, with $2 million. The clipboard slipped from Sam's fingers and hit the marble floor with a crack that echoed like a gunshot. Her mind went blank. Then it raced. Baldini, Vincenzo Baldini. She'd seen the name on contracts, donation forms, and seating charts for months. The Baldini Foundation, the largest sponsor, the VIP table, the speech during dessert. She'd just told a man worth hundreds of millions of dollars that he looked like a plumber. Sam's face drained of color. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. Around them, the ballroom had gone completely silent. Monica looked like she might be sick. Jake was climbing down from his ladder so fast he nearly fell. Mr. Baldini, Sam managed, her voice cracking. We weren't expecting you until this evening. The guest list said, I don't follow guest lists, Vincenzo said. His tone was calm, almost pleasant, but there was something underneath it that made Sam's stomach drop. I like to see how my investments are being managed, especially when I'm trusting them to people who make assumptions based on appearances. He looked around the ballroom slowly, taking in the half-set tables, the incomplete lighting, the scattered equipment. His gaze returned to Sam. I've changed my mind about this event, he said. The Baldini Foundation will be withdrawing its sponsorship, effective immediately. No, Sam breathed. Mr. Baldini, please, I apologize. That was completely unprofessional. I was stressed and I didn't think. You didn't think, he agreed. That's the problem. He turned and walked toward the exit, his boots heavy on the marble. Sam's legs finally remembered how to work. She rushed after him, her heels clicking frantically. Mr. Baldini, wait, please. Can we discuss this? I made a mistake, but the event itself is solid. We've worked so hard. The Foundation's mission deserves. He stopped at the doors and looked back at her. For just a moment, something flickered in his dark eyes. Not anger. Something else. Curiosity, maybe. Or assessment. You should worry less about the Foundation's mission, and more about your own career, Ms. Reid, he said. Then he was gone, disappearing into the hotel corridor. Sam stood frozen in the doorway. Behind her, Monica's voice was barely a whisper. Oh my God, Sam. What just happened? The next 24 hours were a nightmare painted in shades of catastrophe and panic. The Baldini Foundation's withdrawal had a domino effect. 2 other major sponsors pulled out within hours, citing concerns about event management. The Harmony Foundation itself threatened to sue Cooper and Associates for breach of contract. By midnight, the gala had been canceled entirely, and by morning, Sam was sitting in Richard Cooper's office watching her boss's face turn an alarming shade of purple. Richard Cooper was 50 years old, perpetually nervous, and currently looked like he was contemplating a career change that involved running away to a remote island. 14 people, Samantha, he said, his voice shaking. I have to let go of 14 people. Jake, Monica, the entire junior events team. Because we lost the Harmony contract, we lost the Stevenson wedding, and the Morrison corporate retreat just informed me they're going with a competitor. Sam's hands were clenched so tightly in her lap that her knuckles had gone white. She couldn't look at Richard. If she did, she might start crying, and she refused to cry at work. It's my fault, she said quietly. Fire me. Keep the team. It's not that simple, Richard said. He slumped back in his chair, looking 10 years older than he had yesterday. The company's reputation is damaged. Clients are asking questions. And honestly, Sam, I don't know if we can recover from this. Through the glass wall of Richard's office, Sam could see the main floor. Jake was at his desk, laughing at something on his phone, completely unaware that his life was about to be upended. Monica was organizing vendor files, probably already planning next month's events. Events that would never happen. These people trusted her. They'd stayed late with her, brought her coffee during all-nighters, covered for her when she had the flu. They had families, rent, student loans, and she'd destroyed their livelihoods because she couldn't control her mouth for 30 seconds. Richard's phone rang. He glanced at the screen and his eyebrows shot up. "It's Baldini's office," he said, his voice strangled. He answered on speaker, his hand trembling slightly. "Richard Cooper speaking. Mr. Cooper, this is Vincent Baldini." That same deep, calm voice that had haunted Sam's nightmares all night. "I'm calling to discuss a proposal." Richard shot Sam a desperate look. She leaned forward, hardly daring to breathe. "Mr. Baldini, I want to apologize again for yesterday's incident," Richard began, but Vincenzo cut him off. "I'm not interested in apologies. I'm interested in competence. Your employee, Ms. Reid, made a significant error in judgment. However, I believe in second chances when they're earned." Sam's heart was pounding so hard she thought it might crack a rib. "I'm hosting a private dinner at my estate in Westchester next Saturday," Vincenzo continued. 15 guests. High profile. The kind of event that requires perfect execution and absolute discretion. I want Ms. Reid to manage it personally." Richard blinked. "You want Sam to—" "If the event is flawless, I'll reconsider the Harmony Foundation sponsorship and restore my relationship with Cooper and Associates. If it's anything less than perfect, our business relationship ends permanently. Ms. Reid will stay at my property for the week leading up to the dinner to oversee preparations." The office was so quiet Sam could hear her own pulse in her ears. "She'll need full access to my estate, my staff, and my resources," Vincenzo said. "And, Mr. Cooper, make sure she understands that this isn't a negotiation. It's her only option." The line went dead. Richard and Sam stared at each other. Then Richard's face crumpled with relief. "He's giving us a chance," he whispered. "Oh, thank God, he's giving us a chance." "He's giving me a chance," Sam corrected. Her voice sounded distant to her own ears. "To go to his house, in Westchester, for a week." Richard didn't seem to hear the tremor in her words. He was already pulling up files on his computer, his fingers flying across the keyboard. "This is incredible. If you pull this off, Sam, we're saved. The team keeps their jobs. The company survives. You just have to make this dinner perfect." Sam thought about Vincenzo Baldini's calm, assessing gaze, the way he'd looked at her in the ballroom, like he was seeing through every defense she had, the quiet authority in his voice that suggested he was used to getting exactly what he wanted, exactly when he wanted it. "Richard," she said slowly, "what do we actually know about Vincenzo Baldini?" Her boss pulled up a browser window and typed rapidly. The search results made Sam's stomach clench. Vincenzo Baldini, age 35, CEO of Baldini Holdings, a conglomerate with interests in shipping, real estate, and international trade. Net worth estimated at $800 million. Philanthropist, art collector, and according to several carefully worded investigative articles, rumored to have connections to organized crime families in New York and New Jersey. Nothing proven. Nothing charged. But the whispers were there, lurking between the lines of business profiles and society page photographs. "He's a legitimate businessman," Richard said firmly, though his voice wavered. "The foundation does real charitable work. This is a professional opportunity. For a week. At his private estate," Sam said. "What does 'make him happy' actually mean, Richard?" Her boss finally met her eyes. For a moment she saw fear there, quickly hidden behind desperate optimism. "It means you do your job, Sam. You plan an excellent dinner. You prove you're a professional. That's all." They both knew he was lying, or at least hoping very hard that he wasn't. Sam stood up on shaking legs and walked to the glass wall. Outside, Monica was showing Jake something on her tablet. They were both smiling. They had no idea how close they'd come to losing everything. "If I don't do this, everyone gets fired," Sam said. It wasn't a question. "Yes," Richard said quietly. "And if I do it and fail, everyone gets fired anyway." "Yes." Sam pressed her palm against the cool glass. She thought about her apartment lease, her student loans, her carefully planned career trajectory. She thought about the look in Vincenzo Baldini's eyes when he'd walked away from her yesterday. Not angry, interested. That should have scared her more than it did. "When do I leave?" she asked. Richard exhaled in relief. "Tomorrow morning. A car will pick you up at 8. Pack for a week, professional attire, and Sam?" He paused. "Thank you. You're saving all of us." Sam nodded numbly and left his office. She walked past her desk, past the break room, and locked herself in the bathroom. Only then did she let her hands shake. She'd insulted a man who could destroy her with a phone call, and now she was going to spend a week in his mansion, at his mercy, responsible for an event that would determine the fate of 14 people who trusted her. Sam looked at herself in the mirror. Her reflection looked pale, frightened, and very young. "You can do this," she whispered. "You have to." Outside the bathroom door, she could hear Monica laughing at something Jake said. The sound was light and carefree, untouched by the knowledge of how fragile their security really was. Sam straightened her blazer, fixed her hair, and unlocked the door. She had 24 hours to prepare for whatever waited for her in Westchester. She had a feeling it would be the longest week of her life. The car that picked up Sam at 8 in the morning was not what she expected. She'd imagined something ostentatious, a stretch limousine with tinted windows and a driver in a cap. Instead, a sleek black SUV pulled up to her building, armored if she had to guess, with a silent driver who took her single suitcase without a word. Sam climbed into the back seat, her laptop bag clutched to her chest like a shield. The leather seats were soft and expensive, and the interior smelled faintly of cedar. As they pulled away from Manhattan, she watched her neighborhood disappear in the side mirror, wondering if she was making the biggest mistake of her life. The drive to Westchester took 40 minutes. With each mile, the city fell away, replaced by sprawling estates hidden behind stone walls and iron gates. Trees grew thicker, older, their branches forming canopies over winding roads that seemed designed to discourage visitors. When they finally turned onto a private drive, Sam's breath caught. The gate was massive, wrought iron twisted into intricate patterns that looked almost organic, like thorns and vines frozen in metal. A camera mounted on the stone pillar swiveled to track their approach, and the gate swung open silently. The driveway was paved in dark stone and stretched for what felt like a mile through dense forest. When the mansion finally came into view, Sam understood that Vincenzo Baldini didn't just have money. He had taste, power, and a desire for absolute privacy. The house was built from gray stone, 3 stories tall with tall windows that caught the morning light. It wasn't ostentatious like the McMansions they'd passed on the main road. It was fortress-like, solid, built to last centuries. Ivy climbed one wing, and a separate structure that looked like old stables stood to the east. The SUV stopped in a circular courtyard with a fountain at its center. Before Sam could reach for the door handle, it opened, and she found herself looking up at a woman who could have been carved from the same stone as the house. Teresa was probably 70, with steel gray hair pulled back in a severe bun and eyes that missed nothing. She wore a simple black dress and sensible shoes, and the way she stood suggested she'd been running this household longer than Sam had been alive. "Ms. Reid," Teresa said. Her voice was heavily accented. Italian, Sam thought. "Welcome to the Baldini estate. I am Teresa Moretti, the housekeeper, if you will follow me." It wasn't a request. Sam grabbed her laptop bag and followed Teresa through the heavy oak front doors. The interior was breathtaking in its restraint. No gilt, no chandeliers dripping with crystals. Instead, the foyer featured dark wood floors polished to a mirror shine, cream walls hung with what Sam suspected were original oil paintings, and a staircase that curved upward with an iron railing. "Mr. Baldini does not tolerate lateness, incompetence, or excuses," Teresa said, as she led Sam down a hallway lined with more paintings. "Your room is on the 2nd floor. Meals are served at 7 in the morning, 1 in the afternoon, and 7 in the evening. You will meet with Mr. Baldini in his study in 30 minutes. Do not be late." Sam wanted to protest that she'd just arrived, that she needed time to settle in, but the look Teresa gave her suggested that complaining would be a fatal error. "Understood," Sam said. Teresa stopped at a door near the end of the hallway and opened it. "Your accommodations." The room was larger than Sam's entire apartment. A 4-poster bed dominated the space, dressed in white linens that looked expensive enough to require insurance. Tall windows overlooked manicured gardens and the forest beyond. There was a sitting area with a velvet sofa, a desk that looked antique, and a door that led to a bathroom with marble floors and a clawfoot tub. "The study is on the first floor, east wing," Teresa said. 29 minutes, Ms. Reid." She left, closing the door behind her with a definitive click. Sam set down her bags and walked to the window. The grounds stretched for what looked like acres, perfectly maintained despite the isolation. She could see the fountain in the courtyard, the stables, and in the distance, what might have been a greenhouse. This was Vincenzo Baldini's world. Private, controlled, beautiful, and utterly removed from everything Sam knew. She checked her reflection in the bathroom mirror, smoothed her navy blazer, and left the room with 2 minutes to spare. Finding the study required navigating hallways that all looked identical, but Sam followed the general direction Teresa had indicated and found herself standing in front of a door made of dark wood with iron hinges. She knocked twice. "Enter." Sam pushed open the door and stepped into what could only be described as a sanctuary of masculine power. The study was lined floor to ceiling with books that looked actually read, their spines worn and beloved. A fireplace took up one wall, currently unlit, but stacked with logs ready for winter. The desk was a massive piece of mahogany that probably required 6 men to move, and behind it sat Vincenzo Baldini. He looked different from the man in jeans and a t-shirt who'd walked through her event space. He wore a crisp white dress shirt with the sleeves rolled up to his elbows, revealing forearms that were corded with muscle and dusted with dark hair. His black hair was pushed back from his face, still slightly damp as if he'd recently showered. Those dark brown eyes tracked her movement as she entered, assessing, calculating. "Ms. Reid," he said, punctual. "Teresa said you would be." "I don't like to waste time," Sam replied, keeping her voice steady. "Mine or anyone else's." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Sit." There were 2 leather chairs positioned in front of his desk. Sam chose the one on the left and sat down, crossing her ankles and resting her hands on her laptop bag. She met his gaze directly, refusing to be intimidated, even though her heart was racing. Vincenzo leaned back in his chair, studying her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. "Do you know why I'm giving you this opportunity?" he asked. "Because you believe in second chances when they're earned," Sam said, repeating his words from the phone call. "No," Vincenzo said. "That was what I told your boss. I'm asking what you think the real reason is." Sam hesitated. This felt like a test, and she had a feeling the wrong answer would end this arrangement before it began. "Because I didn't back down when you confronted me," she said slowly. "Most people probably grovel when they realize who you are. I was disrespectful, but I wasn't afraid." Vincenzo's smile widened, showing teeth. "Very good. You're smarter than Richard gives you credit for." He stood up and walked around the desk, moving with a predator's grace. Sam forced herself not to flinch as he leaned against the edge of the desk, close enough that she could smell his cologne, something dark and spicy with notes of bergamot. "Here are the rules," he said. "You will stay on this property for the next 7 days. You will plan and execute a dinner for 15 guests next Saturday evening. These are not ordinary guests, Ms. Reid. They are businessmen, politicians, and individuals whose privacy is paramount. You will be discreet, professional, and perfect." "I understand," Sam said. "Do you?" Vincenzo tilted his head. "Because if you make even one mistake, if you show poor judgment, if you fail to meet my expectations, the deal is off. Your company collapses, your team loses their jobs, and you, personally, will find it very difficult to work in this industry again." The threat was delivered in the same calm, pleasant tone he'd used for everything else, which somehow made it more terrifying. "I won't fail," Sam said. "We'll see." Vincenzo picked up a leather folder from his desk and handed it to her. "Guest list. Dietary restrictions. Seating preferences. You have access to my kitchen, my wine cellar, and Teresa will provide contact information for approved vendors. Budget is unlimited within reason. I want elegant, sophisticated, memorable." Sam opened the folder and scanned the guest list. Some names she recognized from business journals. Others were unfamiliar, but the way they were listed, with titles but no company affiliations, made her think Vincenzo's warning about discretion was deadly serious. "I'll need to take notes," she said. Ask questions. Tomorrow, Vincenzo replied. Right now, I have questions for you. Sam looked up, surprised. About the dinner? About you. He crossed his arms, his biceps straining against the fabric of his shirt. You're 28. You've been at Cooper & Associates for 5 years, promoted twice in that time. Your performance reviews describe you as driven, creative, and occasionally abrasive with clients who waste your time. You work an average of 60 hours a week and haven't taken a vacation in 2 years. Sam's jaw tightened. You had me investigated. Of course I did. I don't let strangers into my home without knowing exactly who they are. His gaze was penetrating. What I want to know is why. Why do you work so hard? What are you trying to prove? That's personal, Sam said. Everything in my home is personal, Ms. Reid. You're asking me to trust you with an event that could impact my business relationships and my reputation. I think I'm entitled to know what drives you. Sam set the folder down on her lap and met his eyes. If he wanted honesty, she'd give it to him. I had a boyfriend who told me I'd never make it in this industry, she said. That I was too intense, too ambitious, too unwilling to play the social games required to succeed. He wanted me to be someone smaller, quieter, more convenient. So I left him and decided to prove him wrong about everything. Vincenzo listened without interrupting, his expression unreadable. I work hard because I'm good at what I do, Sam continued, and because every success is proof that he was wrong about me. That's what drives me. Spite, stubbornness, and the refusal to let anyone tell me I'm not capable. For a long moment, Vincenzo said nothing. Then he laughed, a genuine sound of amusement that transformed his face. I like you, Samantha Reid, he said. You're honest even when it costs you. That's rare. Is this the part where you tell me I remind you of yourself when you were younger? Sam asked dryly. No. When I was younger, I was considerably less charming. He pushed off the desk and walked to the door. Teresa will show you the rest of the house. Dinner is at 7. Don't be late. Wait. Sam stood up. Don't you want to discuss the menu? The wine pairings? The timeline? Tomorrow, Vincenzo said. Tonight, you settle in. Rest. You're going to need your energy. He left before she could respond, closing the door behind him. Sam stood alone in the study, clutching the folder, wondering what exactly she'd gotten herself into. The tour of the mansion took 2 hours. Teresa led Sam through room after room, each more impressive than the last. A formal dining room that could seat 30. A library with first editions behind glass. A conservatory filled with orchids that Teresa tended personally. A wine cellar that made Sam's head spin with its inventory. But what struck Sam most were the personal touches. Photographs in silver frames showing a younger Vincenzo with an elderly couple. His grandparents, perhaps, standing in front of a small restaurant. A child's drawing, carefully framed, hanging in the hallway. A kitchen that was clearly the heart of the home, massive and well-used, with copper pots hanging from hooks, and herbs growing in terracotta pots on the windowsill. Mr. Baldini's grandmother designed this kitchen, Teresa said, running her hand over the marble countertop with obvious affection. She taught him to cook here when he was a boy. He still uses her recipes. How long have you worked for the family? Sam asked. 43 years. I came from Italy with his parents. Teresa's expression softened slightly. This house has been empty of warmth for too long. It's good to have a guest, even temporarily. The comment was strange, almost wistful. But before Sam could ask what she meant, Teresa was moving on, pointing out the guest suite amenities and the Wi-Fi password. By the time Sam returned to her room, it was past 5 in the afternoon. She unpacked her suitcase, hung up her blazers and dresses, and tried to focus on creating a preliminary timeline for the dinner. But her mind kept wandering back to Vincenzo, to the way he'd looked at her in the study, to the intelligence and calculation in his eyes. He wasn't what she'd expected. She'd prepared herself for a mobster cliché, all threats and posturing. Instead, she'd found a man who asked questions, who laughed at her honesty, who lived in a fortress filled with family photographs and his grandmother's kitchen. At 6:45, Sam changed into a simple black dress, the most professional thing she'd packed for evening wear, and made her way downstairs. The dining room was smaller than the formal one Teresa had shown her, clearly meant for family meals. The table was set for two, with white china and crystal glasses. Candles flickered in silver holders, and the smell of something incredible drifted from the kitchen. Vincenzo was already seated at the head of the table, now wearing a black sweater that made his dark eyes look even more intense. He stood when she entered, a gesture of old-fashioned courtesy that surprised her. "Good evening, Samantha," he said. "I hope you're hungry." The meal was Italian, course after course of perfectly prepared dishes. Teresa served them without speaking, but Sam caught the older woman watching Vincenzo with something like maternal approval. They talked about the dinner, about logistics and vendor contacts. Vincenzo was knowledgeable about wine, about food presentation, about the subtle politics of seating arrangements. He asked Sam's opinion and actually listened to her answers, occasionally challenging her choices but never dismissing them. It was, Sam realized with discomfort, the most intellectually stimulating conversation she'd had in months. By the time dessert arrived, a panna cotta with fresh berries, Sam had almost forgotten to be nervous. "You said your grandmother taught you to cook," she said. "Do you still?" "When I have time," Vincenzo replied. "It's meditative, requires focus and precision, no room for distraction or error. Like running a business empire." "Exactly like that." "Now see?" He set down his fork and looked at her. "Do you cook, Samantha?" "I reheat takeout with alarming efficiency," she said. "Does that count?" He laughed. "We'll have to remedy that while you're here." Teresa would be horrified. The conversation drifted to music, to books, to the differences between Manhattan and Westchester. Vincenzo was well-read, cultured, with opinions on everything from architecture to philosophy. Sam found herself arguing with him about the merits of modern art, defending her position even as he demolished her arguments with ruthless logic. It felt dangerously like a date. By 9 o'clock, Sam excused herself, claiming exhaustion. Vincenzo walked her to the base of the stairs, stopping just close enough to make her pulse quicken. "Tomorrow we begin in earnest," he said. "Sleep well, Samantha." She climbed the stairs, feeling his eyes on her until she turned the corner. Back in her room, Sam tried to work on her timeline, but the words blurred on her laptop screen. She kept thinking about Vincenzo's hands, the way his forearms flexed when he reached for his wine glass, the sound of his laugh. This was dangerous. He was a client, possibly a criminal, definitely someone with the power to ruin her life. She closed her laptop and went to the window, staring out at the dark forest. That's when she heard it. Music, drifting up from somewhere below. Opera, the soaring vocals unmistakably Italian. Sam should have stayed in her room, should have minded her own business and maintained professional boundaries. Instead, she opened her door and followed the sound. The music led her to a room off the main hallway, doors slightly ajar. Sam hesitated, then pushed them open. It was a sitting room, smaller and more intimate than the formal spaces Teresa had shown her. Vincenzo sat in a leather armchair facing the fireplace, a glass of amber liquid in his hand. The opera played from speakers Sam couldn't see, filling the room with heartbreak and longing. He didn't turn when she entered, but he spoke. "Couldn't sleep?" "I heard the music," Sam said. "I'm sorry. I should go. Stay." He gestured to the chair opposite his. "If you'd like." Sam knew she should leave, knew this crossed every professional boundary. But something in his voice, a note of loneliness that echoed the music, made her walk across the room and sit down. They sat in silence for a long moment, listening to the opera. The fireplace cast dancing shadows across Vincenzo's face, and without the armor of his confidence, he looked tired. "What is it?" Sam asked quietly, nodding toward the music. "Tosca. Puccini. My grandfather's favorite." Vincenzo took a sip of his whiskey. He used to play it every Sunday evening. Said it reminded him that beauty and tragedy are inseparable. That's a heavy philosophy for Sunday evenings. He was a heavy man, came to this country with nothing, built a restaurant empire through sheer will and stubbornness. Taught me that power without purpose is just noise. Sam studied him in the firelight. "Is that what drives you? Purpose?" "Legacy," Vincenzo corrected. "Everything I do is about building something that lasts, something that matters beyond my own lifetime." He looked at her. "What about you? What do you want your legacy to be?" I don't think that far ahead, Sam admitted. I'm too busy trying to survive the next crisis. That's because you're running from something instead of toward something, Vincenzo said. The ex-boyfriend who doubted you. You're still letting him define your success. The observation stung because it was true. Maybe, Sam said. But spite is an excellent motivator. Only for so long. Eventually you need something more. The opera swelled to a crescendo, passionate and devastating. Sam felt something shift in the air between them, a recognition of shared understanding, of two people who'd built walls to protect themselves, and were surprised to find someone on the other side. I should go, she said, standing up. It's late. Vincenzo nodded but didn't stand. Good night, Samantha. Sam walked to the door, then paused. Thank you for dinner, and for this. You're welcome. She climbed the stairs to her room, the music following her until she closed the door. Only then did she let herself acknowledge the truth. She was in trouble. Not because Vincenzo Baldini was dangerous, though he certainly was, but because for the first time in years, she'd met someone who saw past her defenses and wasn't afraid of what he found. And that was far more terrifying than any threat he could make. The next 4 days blurred into a controlled chaos of spreadsheets, phone calls, and the delicate diplomacy required to coordinate an event for people who valued secrecy as much as luxury. Sam established her command center in what Teresa called the morning room, a sun-drenched space overlooking the gardens with a table large enough to spread out fabric samples, menu drafts, and seating charts. Her laptop stayed open from dawn until midnight, emails multiplying faster than she could answer them. The problem started immediately. I'm sorry, but we don't service that area, the florist said on Tuesday morning, her voice tight with poorly concealed fear. Sam had called precious petals based on their portfolio of museum-quality arrangements, exactly the level of artistry Vincenzo's dinner required. The address is in Westchester, Sam said patiently. Your website says you deliver throughout the tri-state area, not to that property. We just can't. I apologize. The line went dead. Sam stared at her phone, frustration building. That was the third vendor who'd refused once they heard the Baldini name. Having trouble? Vincenzo's voice came from the doorway. Sam looked up to find him leaning against the frame, dressed in dark slacks and a gray shirt that made his brown eyes look almost black. He'd been in meetings all morning, conference calls that required his study door to remain firmly closed. But apparently he'd found time to check on her progress. The florists in this area seem to have a geographical aversion to your estate, Sam said carefully. Vincenzo walked into the room, glancing at her notes. Which company? Precious Petals. And before them, Garden of Eden and Westchester Florals. Give me your phone. Sam hesitated, then unlocked it and handed it over. Vincenzo scrolled through her recent calls, then dialed a number from memory. The call connected immediately. This is Vincenzo Baldini. I'm calling about floral arrangements for an event at my estate next Saturday. His voice was pleasant, conversational, but there was steel underneath. I'd like Precious Petals to handle it. Budget is $20,000 for complete design and installation. Sam couldn't hear the response, but she watched Vincenzo's expression remain perfectly calm. I understand you have concerns, he said. Let me be clear. This is a private dinner for legitimate business associates. You'll have a detailed order, payment in advance, and a generous tip for your discretion. What you won't have is any reason to worry about your safety or reputation. Another pause. Excellent. My event coordinator will send over the specifications this afternoon. Thank you for your professionalism. He ended the call and handed back Sam's phone. Problem solved. They'll call you within the hour to apologize and confirm. What did you say to convince them? Sam asked. The truth. That they had nothing to fear and everything to gain. Vincenzo pulled out a chair and sat across from her, studying the fabric samples she'd laid out. Though sometimes my name carries weight that works against me. People make assumptions. Are the assumptions wrong? He looked up, meeting her eyes directly. That depends on which assumptions you're referring to. I'm a businessman, Samantha. I invest in shipping, real estate, hospitality. My deals are legal, my taxes are paid, and my reputation is built on keeping my word. That's not an answer, Sam said. No, Vincenzo agreed. But it's the only one you're going to get. The moment stretched between them, charged with unspoken questions. Then Vincenzo smiled, the expression transforming his face. "The burgundy linens," he said, tapping one of her fabric samples. "Not the cream. They'll photograph better and complement the wine without overwhelming the table settings." Sam blinked at the abrupt change of subject, then looked down at her samples. "I was leaning toward the cream. More classic. More boring. These guests have attended 100 classic dinners. Give them something memorable." He was right. And Sam hated that he was right. She made a note on her chart. "What about the menu?" Vincenzo asked, reaching for her preliminary drafts. "Talk me through your choices." For the next hour, they debated courses and wine pairings. Vincenzo knew more about food than Sam had expected, discussing flavor profiles and seasonal ingredients with the confidence of someone who'd spent serious time in kitchens. He challenged her decisions, pushed her to think beyond safe choices, and occasionally made suggestions that were genuinely brilliant. "Your grandmother really did teach you well," Sam said, watching him sketch out a plating idea for the fish course. "She taught me that food is about more than sustenance. It's communication. Every dish tells the people at your table how much you value them." He handed her the sketch. "This dinner isn't just business, Samantha. It's a statement about who I am and what I offer to my associates." "No pressure, then," Sam said dryly. Vincenzo laughed. "You thrive under pressure. I've been watching you work. The tighter the deadline, the sharper your focus." The observation was too accurate, too personal. Sam looked away, suddenly aware of how close they were sitting, how his sleeve had brushed her arm when he'd handed her the sketch. "I should call the caterer," she said, standing up. "Confirm the revised menu." If Vincenzo noticed her retreat, he didn't comment. "I'll be in my study if you need anything. Teresa is preparing lunch for 1 o'clock. Don't skip it." "I wouldn't dare," Sam said. "She's scarier than you are." "Smart woman." He laughed, and Sam exhaled slowly, trying to ignore the way her skin still tingled where they'd touched. The vendor calls continued through Wednesday and Thursday. Each time Sam hit resistance, a quiet phone call from Vincenzo smoothed the path. It should have bothered her, this casual display of power and influence. Instead, she found herself reluctantly impressed by his efficiency. He wasn't just making threats or throwing money around. He knew these people, understood their businesses, spoke their language. A word here, a recommendation there, and suddenly, Sam had access to the best private chef in the tri-state area, and a sommelier who'd worked at 3-star Michelin restaurants. On Thursday afternoon, Sam was coordinating the final delivery schedule when Vincenzo appeared in the doorway again, this time carrying 2 wine glasses and a bottle. "Time for the tasting," he announced. "Now?" Sam looked at her laptop screen, where 17 unread emails demanded attention. "The emails will wait. The wine won't." He set the glasses on the table and began opening the bottle with practiced ease. "I'm considering this vintage for the main course. I want your opinion." Sam closed her laptop. "I'm not a wine expert. You have taste buds and opinions. That's sufficient." He poured 2 glasses, the liquid a deep ruby red that caught the afternoon sunlight. "Tell me what you think." Sam took the glass he offered, their fingers brushing for just a moment. The contact sent a jolt through her system, electric and unwelcome. She pulled back quickly, raising the glass to her nose to hide her reaction. The wine smelled like dark cherries and something earthier, maybe tobacco or leather. She took a sip, letting it sit on her tongue before swallowing. "It's good," she said. "Complex. The tannins are strong but not overwhelming." "But," Vincenzo prompted, watching her face, "but I think it might overshadow the lamb we're serving. The herb crust is delicate. This wine wants something bolder, maybe a peppercorn-crusted beef." Vincenzo's eyes lit with approval. "Exactly what I thought. We'll save this vintage for another occasion and go with the Bordeaux we discussed yesterday." He reached for the bottle to pour himself more, and Sam reached for her glass at the same moment. Their hands collided, fingers tangling around the stem. Time seemed to slow. Sam felt the warmth of his skin, the calluses on his palm that suggested he did more than sit behind a desk. Vincenzo's hand closed over hers, steadying the glass, and for a heartbeat, neither of them moved. Sam looked up and found him watching her with an intensity that stole her breath. His thumb traced a small circle on the back of her hand, a gesture so subtle she might have imagined it. "Samantha," he said quietly. The sound of her name in his voice, low and rough, broke the spell. Sam pulled her hand away, nearly knocking over the glass in her haste. "I should get back to work," she said, her voice unsteady. "The delivery schedule needs to be confirmed by end of business today." She grabbed her laptop and fled the room, feeling his eyes follow her until she turned the corner. In the safety of her bedroom, Sam set down her laptop with shaking hands. This was spiraling out of control. Vincenzo Baldini was dangerous, powerful, and quite possibly connected to organized crime. She was here to do a job, to save her team's livelihoods. Nothing more. She thought about Jake, about Monica, about the 14 people whose futures depended on her keeping her focus and her professionalism intact. Sam opened her phone and scrolled to her messages with Angela. Her best friend had been texting daily, asking how things were going, if Sam was safe, if Vincenzo Baldini was as intimidating as the rumors suggested. Sam typed out a response. "Everything's fine. Just busy with preparations. Don't worry about me." She didn't mention the wine tasting, the way Vincenzo looked at her, or the fact that she was lying awake at night thinking about conversations by firelight and the sound of opera music. The phone buzzed in her hand, making her jump. A text from an unknown number. "Leave the property if you value your life." Sam stared at the screen, her heart suddenly pounding. Another text came through immediately. "The Baldini family protects its own. You are not one of them. Get out while you still can." Her hands were shaking as a third message arrived. "You have until Saturday. This is your only warning." Sam stood up, her legs unsteady. The room suddenly felt too small, the walls pressing in. Someone knew she was here, someone was watching, and they wanted her gone. She grabbed her phone and ran downstairs, following the sound of voices to Vincenzo's study. The door was partially open, and through the gap she could see Vincenzo standing behind his desk with two men she didn't recognize. They were both large, dressed in dark suits, and the way they stood suggested they were far more than business associates. Sam hesitated. She was clearly interrupting something private, possibly dangerous, but the messages on her phone felt like ice against her palm, and terror overrode caution. She knocked. 3 sharp raps. The conversation inside stopped instantly. Vincenzo's voice came through the door, hard and cold in a way she'd never heard before. "I said no interruptions." "It's Sam," she managed. "I need to speak with you. It's urgent." A pause, then footsteps, and the door swung open. Vincenzo stood there, his expression unreadable. Behind him, the 2 men watched with identical blank faces. "What's wrong?" Vincenzo asked, and just like that, the warmth returned to his voice. He looked at her face and his jaw tightened. Inside, now, Sam stepped into the study. Vincenzo closed the door and turned to the 2 men. "We're done here. Make sure the shipment is secure and report back tomorrow." The men left without a word, not even glancing at Sam as they passed. When the door closed behind them, Vincenzo crossed the room in 3 strides and took Sam's shoulders in his hands. "What happened? Are you hurt?" "No, I got these." Sam thrust her phone at him with trembling hands. Vincenzo read the messages, his expression growing darker with each line. When he finished, he looked up, and Sam saw something in his eyes that was far more frightening than any threat on her phone. It was rage, cold and controlled, and absolutely lethal. "How long ago did these arrive?" His voice was dangerously quiet. "Just now." "Minutes ago. I came straight here." Vincenzo handed back her phone and walked to his desk, pulling out his own phone and dialing. The call connected instantly. "Luca, my study. Now." He hung up and looked at Sam, his jaw set in a line of granite. "Sit down." "Vincenzo, what's happening? Who would send these?" "Someone who made a very serious mistake." He moved to the window, looking out at the grounds with the focus of a man assessing defensive positions. "I have competitors who would like to see my business relationships disrupted. This dinner is important, and someone clearly wants to prevent it from happening. By threatening me? By trying to scare you away. Attacking me directly would start a war. Attacking my event coordinator is a message. He turned back to her, but they miscalculated. You're not just my event coordinator anymore, Samantha. You're under my protection. The door opened and a man entered, moving with the controlled power of someone trained for violence. He was about Vincenzo's age, with dark hair cut military short and eyes that missed nothing. He looked at Sam, then at Vincenzo. Boss, Luca, this is Samantha Reid. She's been receiving threats. Vincenzo showed him Sam's phone. Find out who sent these and make sure they understand the consequences of touching what belongs to me. Sam's breath caught at the possessive declaration, but before she could protest, Luca was nodding. I'll trace the number and have an answer by morning. What do you want done about Ms. Reid's security? You're her shadow from now until the dinner is over. She doesn't go anywhere on the property without you nearby. Bedroom, bathroom, those are her only private spaces. Everywhere else, you're watching. Understood. Vincenzo, that's excessive, Sam began, but he cut her off with a look that made her words die. Someone threatened you on my property, under my roof. That's not excessive. That's the bare minimum. He crossed the room and stood in front of her, close enough that she had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. You came here because I gave you no choice, but now you're here. You're mine to protect. No one touches you. No one frightens you. No one makes you feel unsafe in my home. Do you understand? Sam nodded, unable to find her voice. Good. Vincenzo looked at Luca. Get started. I want names by sunrise. Luca left as silently as he'd arrived. Vincenzo guided Sam to one of the leather chairs and crouched in front of her, his hands resting lightly on the armrests, caging her in without touching her. I need you to be honest with me, he said. Are you afraid of me right now? Sam looked into his eyes and saw concern there, genuine worry beneath the anger. No, she whispered. I'm afraid of whoever sent those messages, but not of you. Something in his expression softened. You should be afraid of me, Samantha. Most people are, but I'm glad you're not, because I need you to trust me for the next few days. Can you do that? I don't have much choice, do I? There's always a choice. You could leave right now. I'd have someone drive you back to Manhattan, and we'd find another way to solve your company's problems. But if you stay under my terms, with my protection. Sam thought about Jake and Monica, about Richard's desperate hope, about the 14 people whose futures rested on her shoulders. She thought about walking away from the most dangerous and confusing week of her life. Then she thought about Vincenzo's hand over hers, about firelight and opera music, about the way he challenged her to be better, sharper, more than she'd allowed herself to be. I'm staying, she said. Vincenzo's smile was fierce and proud. Then we finish this together. He stood and offered her his hand. Sam took it, letting him pull her to her feet. For a moment they stood close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his body, could see the flecks of gold in his brown eyes. The person who sent those messages made a critical error, Vincenzo said softly. They thought you were someone I could be manipulated through. They were right, but they underestimated how far I'll go to protect what's mine. He released her hand and stepped back, the professional mask sliding into place. Luca will introduce himself properly at dinner. For now, finish your vendor confirmations. And Samantha? He paused at the door. Thank you for coming to me instead of running. That took courage. After he left, Sam sank back into the chair, her legs suddenly weak. Through the window, she could see Luca in the garden, phone to his ear, already working. This was real. The danger, the protection, the possessive way Vincenzo had spoken about her. She wasn't just planning a dinner anymore. She was caught in something far more complicated, standing at the center of conflicts she didn't fully understand. And the most terrifying part was that she didn't want to leave. Saturday morning arrived with crystalline sunlight streaming through Sam's bedroom windows, the kind of perfect autumn day that seemed designed specifically for important events. She woke at 6, her mind already running through checklists before her eyes fully opened. The mansion had been transformed over the past 48 hours. White roses and calla lilies filled every surface, their elegant simplicity a stark contrast to the opulence most people expected from a man like Vincenzo. The dining room glowed with amber uplighting that made the space feel warm despite its grandeur. French porcelain gleamed on burgundy linens, each place setting arranged with mathematical precision. Sam had personally inspected every detail 3 times. Teresa had watched her with increasing approval, occasionally offering small adjustments that elevated the presentation from excellent to flawless. The chef and his team had arrived yesterday to begin preparations, taking over the kitchen with military efficiency. The sommelier had decanted wines that cost more than Sam's annual rent, treating each bottle like sacred artifacts. Everything was ready. Everything was perfect. And Sam was terrified. She stood in front of her closet, staring at the dress that had arrived by private courier 2 days ago. No note, no explanation, just a garment bag with her name on it. When she'd opened it, Teresa had been there, and the older woman's rare smile had told Sam everything she needed to know about who had sent it. The dress was champagne-colored satin, strapless with a bodice that would hug her curves before flowing into a graceful floor-length skirt. It was elegant without being ostentatious, sophisticated without trying too hard. It was perfect, and it had clearly cost a fortune. Sam had wanted to refuse it, to maintain some boundary between professional and personal, but Teresa had given her a look that suggested refusing would be both foolish and insulting, so the dress had stayed. Now, with 2 hours until the first guests arrived, Sam took a shower and began the process of transforming herself from event coordinator to part of the evening's carefully crafted illusion. The dress fit like it had been made for her, which it probably had. Her makeup was understated but polished, her hair pulled into a low chignon that exposed her neck and collarbones. When Sam looked in the mirror, she barely recognized herself. She looked like she belonged in this world of wealth and power and carefully maintained secrets. A knock on her door made her turn. "Come in." Teresa entered carrying a slim jewelry box. "From Mr. Baldini. He said you would need these to complete the look." Inside were diamond earrings, simple studs that caught the light with elegant fire. Sam's breath caught. "Teresa, I can't accept these. They belong to his grandmother," Teresa said quietly. "He wants you to wear them tonight. It would honor her memory." That changed everything. This wasn't a gift meant to impress or obligate. It was something far more personal, an invitation into family history. Sam took the earrings with careful hands and put them on. In the mirror, they transformed the entire presentation, adding just enough sparkle without overwhelming anything else. "Thank you," she whispered. Teresa's hand rested briefly on her shoulder, a gesture of surprising warmth. "You've done well this week, child. The house feels alive again." He's noticed. Before Sam could ask what that meant, Teresa was gone. Sam made her way downstairs at 4 o'clock, an hour before guests were scheduled to arrive. The staff was in position, servers in black uniforms moving with practiced silence. Luca stood near the entrance, dressed in a dark suit that did nothing to hide his dangerous competence. He'd been her constant shadow since Thursday, always present but never intrusive, and she'd grown oddly comfortable with his protection. He looked up as she descended the stairs, and something that might have been approval flickered across his normally impassive face. "You look ready," he said simply. "I hope so." Sam scanned the room one more time, looking for any detail that needed adjustment. "Where's Vincenzo?" "In his study. He asked that you join him before the guests arrive." Sam's pulse quickened. She walked through the hallway to the familiar door and knocked twice. "Enter." Vincenzo stood in front of the window, and when he turned to face her, Sam forgot how to breathe. He wore a black tuxedo that had clearly been custom-tailored, the jacket emphasizing his broad shoulders and athletic build. His white shirt was crisp against his olive skin, and his dark hair was swept back, revealing the sharp planes of his face. He looked powerful, dangerous, and absolutely magnetic. His eyes traveled over her slowly, taking in every detail of the dress, the hair, the earrings. When he met her gaze again, there was heat there that made her skin flush. "You're wearing my grandmother's earrings," he said. "Teresa said it would honor her memory. If that was presumptuous, I apologize." It wasn't. Vincenzo crossed the room, stopping just close enough that she could smell his cologne, dark and spicy. "You look extraordinary, Samantha. Every man at that table tonight will envy me." "I'm your event coordinator, not your date," Sam said, but her voice lacked conviction. "Tonight you're both." He reached up and adjusted one of the earrings, his fingers brushing her jaw. The touch sent electricity through her entire body. The guests will assume we're involved. It's safer that way. Provides a natural explanation for your presence and my protection. Can you play the part? Sam's mouth went dry. What does playing the part involve? Nothing you're uncomfortable with. But I'll be close to you tonight. I'll touch your back when we move between rooms. Hold your chair when you sit. Look at you like you're mine. It's theater. But it needs to be convincing. And after tonight, Vincenzo's hand lingered near her face, his thumb tracing her jawline with devastating gentleness. After tonight, we'll see. The sound of cars in the driveway broke the moment. Vincenzo stepped back, his expression shifting into the mask of a perfect host. They're arriving. Ready? Sam straightened her shoulders and lifted her chin. Ready. The guests arrived in a carefully staggered sequence, each entrance orchestrated to avoid unwanted interactions. Sam stood beside Vincenzo in the foyer, watching him greet each arrival with the exact degree of warmth or formality their relationship required. First came the politicians, 2 city councilmen and a state senator, all with wives wearing fixed smiles and designer gowns. Then the businessmen, CEOs of construction and shipping companies, whose names Sam recognized from financial news. They looked at Vincenzo with respect, tinged with wariness, and their handshakes were firm, but brief. As the guests moved into the drawing room for cocktails, Sam noticed the subtle hierarchies at play. Who stood near whom? Who initiated conversations? Who deferred? This wasn't just a dinner. It was a careful dance of power and alliance. Luca remained near the entrance, watching everything with predator focus. Occasionally, he'd murmur something into a discreet earpiece, coordinating with security Sam couldn't see, but knew was there. The final guest arrived 15 minutes late, making an entrance that was clearly calculated to assert dominance. Dmitry Volkov was a bear of a man, easily 6'5" with the build of someone who'd spent years in brutal physical training. His blonde hair was cropped close to his skull, and his blue eyes were chips of Arctic ice. He wore his tuxedo-like armor, and when he smiled, it didn't reach past his teeth. "Vincenzo," he said in heavily accented English. "Thank you for the invitation. Your home is as impressive as the rumors suggest." "Dmitry." Vincenzo's voice was perfectly cordial, but Sam felt him tense beside her. "Welcome. This is Samantha Reid, who organized this evening." Dmitry's gaze shifted to Sam, traveling over her body with insulting slowness. "Enchanted. Vincenzo, you always did have excellent taste in acquisitions." Sam's spine stiffened at being called an acquisition, but Vincenzo's hand found the small of her back, a warning and a comfort simultaneously. "Ms. Reid is a professional whose talents I'm fortunate to have access to," Vincenzo said smoothly. "Shall we join the others?" Throughout cocktail hour, Sam circulated as planned, ensuring glasses stayed filled and conversation flowed. She was hyper-aware of Luca's presence nearby, always within 10 feet, always watching. But she was more aware of Dmitry, whose gaze followed her movements with predatory interest. When it was time to move to the dining room, Vincenzo materialized at her side, his hand resting possessively on her waist as he guided her to her seat. She was positioned to his right, a place of honor that wasn't lost on the other guests. The meal began with champagne and oysters, a test of the kitchen's precision. The oysters were perfect, briny and fresh, and the champagne was sublime. Conversation remained light as the first courses arrived, superficial discussions of business and politics that revealed nothing important. Sam watched Vincenzo command the table with effortless charisma. He knew exactly when to laugh, when to ask questions, when to offer insights that shifted conversational direction. He was playing chess while everyone else played checkers, and Sam found herself fascinated by the performance. By the main course, a perfectly prepared lamb with herb crust and the Bordeaux Sam had recommended, the real conversations began. Shipping routes and construction contracts, zoning variances and import regulations. The language was coded, but the meaning was clear. These men were negotiating territory and influence, and Vincenzo sat at the center of it all, orchestrating alliances with surgical precision. Dmitry had been mostly quiet through the meal, drinking heavily and watching. But as servers cleared the main course plates, he stood, his massive frame casting shadows across the table. "A toast," he announced, his voice cutting through the comfortable murmur of conversation. Vincenzo's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. This wasn't planned, and spontaneous toasts were never innocent. "To Vincenzo Baldini," Dimitri said, raising his glass. "A man who has built quite the empire. Though I must say, old friend, you seem different these days. Softer, perhaps. Hiding behind beautiful women and elegant dinners instead of defending your territory the old way." The temperature in the room dropped 20 degrees. Every guest went still, watching to see how Vincenzo would respond to the public challenge. Sam's heart hammered against her ribs. She recognized the threat in Dimitri's words, the implication that Vincenzo had grown weak, that his empire was vulnerable. This was the moment everything could fall apart. Vincenzo stood slowly, his movements controlled and deliberate. When he spoke, his voice was quiet, but it carried absolute authority. "Dimitri, I appreciate your concern for my business practices. Let me clarify something for everyone at this table." He looked around the room, meeting each guest's eyes in turn. "I've built my position through strategy, not brutality. Through intelligence, not intimidation. Anyone who mistakes sophistication for weakness is welcome to test that assumption." The threat in his words was unmistakable, delivered with such calm certainty that it was far more terrifying than any shouted challenge would have been. "The men who ruled through fear and violence are dead or in prison," Vincenzo continued. "I prefer to be neither. But make no mistake, my willingness to negotiate should never be confused with inability to act. I protect what's mine with absolute commitment, and the consequences for threatening my interests are swift and permanent." He raised his own glass. "So let's drink to evolution, Dimitri, to understanding that true power lies not in how loud you roar, but in how completely you control the board." For a long, agonizing moment, Dimitri stared at Vincenzo across the table. Then he laughed, loud and forced, and drank. The other guests followed suit, the tension breaking like a snapped wire. But Sam had seen Dimitri's eyes, had recognized the cold calculation there. He'd been testing Vincenzo, probing for weakness, and Sam suddenly understood with perfect clarity that the threatening messages on her phone had come from this man. He'd been trying to disrupt the dinner, to make Vincenzo look incompetent in front of his associates. It hadn't worked. The evening continued flawlessly, moving through dessert and coffee, through after-dinner drinks in the drawing room. By 11 o'clock, the guests were departing, each one thanking Vincenzo for the exceptional evening. Dimitri was the last to leave. He stopped in front of Sam on his way out, standing too close, invading her personal space with deliberate aggression. "You did well tonight, Ms. Reid," he said softly. "But you should be careful. Vincenzo's protection only extends as far as his power, and empires fall faster than they rise." Before Sam could respond, Luca was there, a wall of silent threat. Dimitri smiled and walked out into the night. When the last car pulled away, the mansion fell silent. The staff began cleanup with efficient speed, and Sam supervised the final details, ensuring everything was restored to perfection. By midnight, only she, Vincenzo, Teresa, and Luca remained. Sam found herself in the kitchen, helping Teresa pack away the remaining centerpiece flowers. Her feet ached in the elegant heels, and exhaustion was setting in now that the adrenaline had faded. But there was also deep satisfaction. They'd done it. The dinner had been flawless. "You should rest, child," Teresa said gently. "You've earned it." "Just finishing up," Sam replied. But she didn't move, couldn't quite bring herself to walk away from this space that had become familiar over the past week. Footsteps announced Vincenzo's arrival. He'd removed his jacket and bow tie, his shirt unbuttoned at the collar, and he looked exhausted in a way that made him somehow more human. "Teresa, go to bed," he said. "I'll handle the rest." Teresa looked between them, and Sam swore she saw the older woman smile before she disappeared into the back hallway. Vincenzo leaned against the counter, running a hand through his hair. "That was potentially the most stressful evening of my career, but successful," Sam said. "I watched them. By the end of the night, you'd secured every alliance you needed. Dimitri's challenge just made you look stronger. Dimitri made a mistake tonight, Vincenzo said, his voice hardening, threatening me in front of witnesses, implying I'd grown weak. And before that, sending you those messages. He looked at her directly. Luca traced them. It was Dimitri's organization trying to sabotage the evening. I figured that out during his toast, Sam admitted. What happens now? Now he learns that some mistakes have permanent consequences. But that's not your concern. Vincenzo pushed off the counter and moved closer. You exceeded every expectation tonight, Samantha. The dinner was perfect. You were perfect. The compliment warmed her more than it should have. I was just doing my job. No. You were extraordinary under pressure, graceful in the face of threats, and you never once let fear show. My associates noticed. Several of them asked about you, wanted to know if you'd be available for their own events. Sam's heart sank slightly. Of course. This had been a job interview in disguise, a chance to prove herself to potential clients. I suppose that means the contract with Cooper and Associates is secure. More than secure. I'll be signing a 3-year commitment with guaranteed minimums. Richard can hire back his entire staff and probably expand. Your team is safe, Samantha. Jake, Monica, all of them. You did what you came here to do. Relief washed over Sam so powerfully, she had to steady herself against the counter. Thank you. You have no idea what this means to them. To me. I have some idea. Vincenzo was close now, close enough that she could see the fatigue around his eyes, the tension still carried in his shoulders. But there's something else we need to discuss. What? Why I really brought you here. He took a breath, and for the first time since she'd met him, he looked uncertain. When you insulted me at the hotel, my first instinct was anger, but what I felt more strongly was curiosity. You treated me like a regular person, not a name or a reputation. You were rude and stressed and completely authentic. Sam's pulse was racing. That's a strange quality to admire. In my world, authentic is rare. People are always performing, always calculating. But you just were. And I wanted to know who you really were beneath the professional armor. His hand came up, fingers brushing her cheek. So I created a situation where you'd have to stay, where I'd have a week to figure you out. That's manipulative, Sam whispered, but she didn't pull away from his touch. Completely. I won't apologize for it. His thumb traced her lower lip, and Sam's breath caught. But what I didn't anticipate was that you'd see me too. The real me, not the performance. You challenged me, argued with me, made me laugh. You weren't intimidated, and you weren't impressed by the wrong things. Vincenzo, what are you saying? I'm saying that I want you to stay. Not as an event coordinator. As my consultant, yes, but also as something more. Something we could explore without deadlines or contracts hanging over us. He stepped closer, his other hand finding her waist. I want to know what happens when we stop pretending this is just business. Sam's mind raced. This was dangerous on every possible level. Vincenzo was powerful, connected to a world that could destroy her. Getting involved with him would mean accepting risks she'd never imagined. But when she looked into his eyes, she saw honesty there, vulnerability he rarely showed. He wasn't offering her a fantasy. He was offering her a choice, clear-eyed and complicated. I don't belong in your world, Sam said. Maybe that's exactly why I want you in it. His forehead rested against hers. I'm not asking for an answer tonight. You're exhausted, and this has been overwhelming. Go back to Manhattan tomorrow. Think about what you want. Talk to your friends. But know that the offer stands. A place here, with me, if you want it. Sam closed her eyes, breathing in his scent, feeling the solid warmth of him. Every logical part of her brain screamed that this was insane. But another part, deeper and more honest, whispered that she'd never felt more alive than she had this week. I need to think, she said finally. I know. Vincenzo stepped back, releasing her. Get some sleep. We'll talk in the morning. Sam nodded and walked toward the doorway. At the threshold, she turned back. Vincenzo stood in the kitchen, watching her with an expression of careful hope that made her chest ache. Thank you for trusting me with this, she said. The dinner, but also everything else. Thank you for not running when you had every reason to. Sam climbed the stairs to her room, her mind spinning with possibilities and dangers. Through her window, she could see Luca doing a final security sweep of the grounds, vigilant even at this late hour. Tomorrow, she'd return to Manhattan, to her apartment and her life, and the safety of familiar routines. But nothing would be the same. She'd seen behind the curtain of Vincenzo Baldini's world, and more terrifying, she'd liked what she found there. The question now was whether she was brave enough to walk through the door he'd opened, knowing there might be no way back. Sunday morning arrived with rain tapping against the windows of the black SUV as it carried Sam back to Manhattan. She'd said goodbye to Teresa in the kitchen, accepting the older woman's brief but warm embrace. Vincenzo had walked her to the car, his hands in his pockets, carefully maintaining distance after the previous night's confession. "Call me when you're settled," he'd said, and she'd nodded, not trusting her voice. Luca had offered to accompany her, but Sam had gently declined. "I'll be safe in my own apartment." "You've done more than enough." Now, watching Westchester fade in the rearview mirror, Sam felt the weight of the past week pressing down on her chest. Everything looked different somehow, smaller and less vibrant than it had before. Her apartment building appeared exactly as she'd left it, the same chipped paint on the lobby mailboxes, the same flickering fluorescent light in the elevator. But when Sam unlocked her door and stepped inside, the space felt alien. Her studio apartment that had always seemed cozy now felt cramped. The view of the brick wall across the alley seemed depressing after days of looking out at forest and gardens. Sam dropped her suitcase and immediately pulled out her phone, scrolling to Richard's number. It was Sunday, but this couldn't wait. He answered on the second ring. "Sam, I was hoping you'd call. How did it go?" "Better than expected. Did Vincenzo contact you?" "First thing this morning." Richard's voice was trembling with excitement. "Sam, he's signing a 3-year contract with guaranteed minimum spend. And he's referred us to 4 of his business associates who are interested in our services. We're not just saved, we're expanding. I'm calling everyone in tomorrow to give them the news." Sam closed her eyes, relief flooding through her. Jake and Monica? The rest of the team? Everyone keeps their jobs. "In fact, I'm going to need to hire 3 more people to handle the new workload. Sam, you did it. You saved us all." After hanging up, Sam sat on her worn couch and let the reality sink in. Jake would keep making bad jokes at his desk. Monica would continue organizing vendor files with obsessive precision. 14 people would pay their rent, feed their families, build their careers. Because of one perfect dinner, and a week of careful negotiation with a man who terrified and fascinated her in equal measure. Her phone buzzed with texts from Monica and Jake, both asking when she'd be back in the office, eager to hear about the mysterious private event that had saved their company. Sam sent vague responses promising details tomorrow. The apartment felt too quiet. Sam tried to work on her laptop, reviewing timelines for upcoming events. But the words blurred on the screen. She kept thinking about Vincenzo's kitchen, about wine tastings and opera music, about conversations that challenged and excited her. A knock on her door made her jump. She looked through the peephole and saw Angela's familiar face, holding 2 coffee cups and wearing an expression of determined concern. "I can hear you thinking through the door," Angela said when Sam let her in. "You've been gone a week and you've sent exactly 3 text messages, all of which said, 'I'm fine.' And that's code for, 'I'm absolutely not fine but don't want to talk about it.' So talk." Sam took the coffee and sank back onto the couch. Angela sat beside her, waiting with the patient silence of someone who'd known her since college. "The event went perfectly," Sam started. "The contract is secured. Everyone keeps their jobs." "That's great. So why do you look like someone who just survived a natural disaster?" "Because Vincenzo Baldini is not what I expected. And I think I might have feelings for him, which is completely insane because he's dangerous and powerful and possibly connected to organized crime, and I should run as far away from him as possible." The words tumbled out in a rush. Once started, Sam couldn't stop. She told Angela everything: the mansion, the threats, Luca's protection, Dimitri's challenge at the dinner. She told her about Vincenzo's honesty, about his offer for her to stay, about the way he looked at her like she was something precious and rare. Angela listened without interrupting, her expression cycling through shock, concern, and finally something that looked like understanding. "Sam, I'm going to ask you a serious question. and I need you to be honest. Do you feel safe with him? Yes, Sam said without hesitation. That's the crazy part. I should be terrified. But when I'm with Vincenzo, I feel safer than I've ever felt anywhere. Then maybe you should listen to that instinct instead of overthinking it. Angela squeezed her hand. You've spent years building walls to protect yourself. Maybe this guy is worth risking some of those defenses. They talked for another hour before Angela left, making Sam promise to call if she needed anything. Alone again, Sam tried to sleep, but her mind wouldn't settle. She kept replaying moments from the week, analyzing conversations, wondering what Vincenzo was doing right now. At 11 o'clock, exhausted and restless, Sam finally drifted into uneasy sleep. The sound that woke her wasn't loud, just the soft click of her apartment door opening, a sound that shouldn't have been possible since she'd locked the deadbolt. Sam's eyes snapped open in the darkness. Her heart hammered as she saw the silhouettes of two large men entering her apartment, moving with practiced silence. She opened her mouth to scream, but a hand clamped over her face, rough and smelling of cigarette smoke. A voice with a thick Russian accent spoke in her ear. Make noise and you die here. Stay quiet and you might survive. Nod if you understand. Sam nodded, terror flooding her system. The hand released her mouth, and immediately a cloth was pressed to her face. The chemical smell made her gag, and then darkness swallowed everything. Sam woke to cold. The kind of penetrating chill that came from concrete and metal and spaces designed for warehousing goods. Not people. Her head throbbed with chemical hangover, and when she tried to move, she found her wrists and ankles bound to a metal chair with zip ties that bit into her skin. Panic tried to claw its way up her throat, but Sam forced it down. Panic wouldn't help. She needed to think, to assess, to find any advantage she could. The space around her was vast and empty, a warehouse with high ceilings and broken windows that let in weak morning light. Crates were stacked against far walls, and the floor was stained with oil and rust. Two men stood near the entrance, smoking and speaking in Russian. Neither paid her much attention. Sam tested the zip ties carefully, trying not to draw attention. They were tight, professionally done. Her phone was gone, her shoes were missing, and her hands were already going numb from restricted circulation. How long had she been unconscious? It was daylight, so at least several hours. Would anyone have noticed she was missing yet? Angela wouldn't check on her until evening at the earliest. Richard wouldn't expect her in the office until tomorrow. Vincenzo. Would he know? But how could he? She'd told Luca she'd be safe at home. She'd dismissed the protection that might have prevented this. Footsteps echoed through the warehouse, heavy and deliberate. Dmitry Volkov emerged from the shadows, looking even more massive in casual clothes than he had in his tuxedo. His smile was cold and satisfied. Ms. Reid. Awake at last. Good. I was beginning to worry we'd used too much chloroform. He pulled a crate over and sat on it, studying her like a specimen. Do you know why you're here? Sam's mouth was dry, but she forced words out. Because you're angry that Vincenzo embarrassed you. Embarrassed? Dmitry laughed. Such a mild word for what that bastard did. He challenged my authority in front of men whose respect I've earned through blood and fear. He made me look weak, antiquated, obsolete. That cannot stand. So you kidnap me? That makes you look strong? The slap came fast, snapping her head to the side. Pain exploded across her cheek, and Sam tasted blood. You will speak when spoken to, Dmitry said calmly. You're here because Vincenzo has forgotten the old ways. He thinks power comes from contracts and diplomacy, but real power comes from being willing to take what matters most to your enemy. I'm not what matters most to him. I'm an event coordinator, a temporary employee. You're lying. I saw how he looked at you during the dinner, how he touched you, protected you, stood close enough to mark you as his. Whether you realize it or not, Ms. Reid, you've become important to Vincenzo Baldini, and that makes you the perfect leverage. Dmitry stood and pulled out a phone, positioning it to capture Sam in the frame. We're going to send him a video. You're going to tell him that you're unharmed, but that will change if he doesn't meet my demands. Territorial concessions, public acknowledgement of my authority, and a substantial payment for the insult at his dinner. Nod if you understand. Sam looked at the camera, at Dimitri's confident smile, and made a decision. She thought about Jake and Monica, safe now because the contract was secured. She thought about Richard, able to hire new people instead of firing existing ones. Whatever happened to her, she'd accomplished what she came to do. And she thought about Vincenzo, about the fury she'd seen in his eyes when he'd read the threatening messages, about the lethal calm in his voice when he'd promised to protect her. Dimitri wouldn't win this. She just had to survive long enough for Vincenzo to prove it. "I understand," Sam said clearly. The video was quick and brutal. Dimitri listed his demands while Sam sat silent and bound, trying to project calm she didn't feel. When he was satisfied, he sent it and tossed the phone aside. "Now we wait," he said. "Vincenzo has until noon to respond. If he refuses, I start removing your fingers. 1 per hour until he agrees, or until you run out of fingers. Either way, he learns that challenging me has consequences." He left her alone with the 2 guards, disappearing into an office at the back of the warehouse. Sam's mind raced through possibilities. The zip ties were too tight to slip. The guards were too alert to rush. Her only advantage was time, and the hope that Vincenzo moved faster than Dimitri anticipated. Sam closed her eyes and focused on her breathing, on staying calm, on being ready for whatever happened next. She thought about her conversation with Angela, about walls and defenses, and whether Vincenzo was worth the risk. She'd been afraid to choose him, afraid of what that choice might cost her. Now, tied to a chair in a warehouse waiting to see if she'd keep all her fingers, Sam realized the choice had already been made. Somewhere between wine tastings and opera music, between kitchen conversations and challenging dinners, she'd let Vincenzo past her defenses. She just hoped she lived long enough to tell him. The explosion of splintering wood announced Vincenzo's arrival. The warehouse doors burst inward, and men in black tactical gear poured through like a flood. The guards near Sam barely had time to reach for their weapons before they were on the ground, disarmed and subdued with brutal efficiency. Dimitri emerged from his office, gun in hand, but Luca was already there. The takedown was fast and violent, Dimitri's weapon clattering across the concrete as Luca pinned him face down with a knee in his spine. And then Vincenzo was there, crossing the warehouse floor with deadly purpose. He wasn't wearing a suit. He was in black tactical gear like his men, vest and weapons that suggested he'd been ready to tear the city apart to find her. He dropped to his knees in front of Sam's chair, and the expression on his face made her heart clench. Raw fear, desperate relief, and underneath it all, a fury so cold it was terrifying. "Samantha." His hands were shaking as he pulled out a knife and cut through the zip ties. "Did he hurt you?" Sam's hands were free, blood rushing back into her fingers with painful tingles. "I'm okay. Vincenzo, I'm okay." He pulled her out of the chair and into his arms, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. His face buried in her hair, and she felt him trembling. "I should have sent Luca with you," he said roughly. "I should have known Dimitri would retaliate. This is my fault." "No." Sam pulled back enough to see his face. "This is his fault. You didn't kidnap me. You didn't threaten me. Don't take responsibility for someone else's violence." Behind them, Dimitri was screaming threats in Russian and English, struggling against the men who held him. Vincenzo's expression went flat and cold. He stood, keeping Sam behind him. "Take him to the car," Vincenzo ordered. "I'll deal with him personally later." "Boss, what about the cleanup?" one of the men asked. "Burn it. Make sure there's nothing left to trace." Vincenzo looked at Luca. "You're with me. Everyone else. Standard protocol." The warehouse emptied quickly. Dimitri dragged out, still screaming vengeance. Luca approached, his face drawn with guilt. "Ms. Reid, I'm sorry. I should have insisted on accompanying you. This wouldn't have happened if—" "Luca, stop." Sam touched his arm. "You gave me the choice and I made it. This isn't on you." "She's right," Vincenzo said, though his voice was still hard. "The blame falls on Dimitri and no one else. But from now on, when I say someone needs protection, there are no choices. Understood?" "Yes, boss." Vincenzo guided Sam to the waiting SUV, wrapping his jacket around her shoulders when he noticed her shaking. The drive back to Westchester was silent, Vincenzo's hand gripping hers like he was afraid she'd disappear. When they pulled up to the mansion, Teresa was waiting on the steps, her usually stern face creased with worry. She swept Sam inside, clucking in Italian, producing hot tea and a thick blanket before Sam could protest. "Sit, drink. You need warmth," Teresa commanded, settling Sam on the couch in the small sitting room where they'd listened to opera together. Vincenzo hovered nearby, looking uncertain in a way she'd never seen him. Teresa pressed the tea into Sam's hands, then surprised everyone by leaning down and kissing her forehead. "You're safe now, child. Nothing will hurt you here." She left, giving Vincenzo a significant look as she passed. When they were alone, Vincenzo sat beside Sam, careful not to crowd her, but close enough that she could feel his warmth. "I need to tell you something," he said quietly. "When I got that video, when I saw you tied to that chair, I became someone I've worked very hard not to be. The kind of man who solves problems with violence and fear instead of strategy and intelligence. What did you do to Dimitri?" "Nothing yet. But I will. He threatened what's mine. Hurt someone under my protection. That has consequences that are permanent and non-negotiable." His jaw tightened. "I'm giving you this information because you deserve honesty. This is who I am, Samantha. This is the world I live in. Men like Dimitri exist, and dealing with them requires darkness I've tried to keep separate from the legitimate parts of my life." Sam set down her tea and turned to face him fully. "I need you to answer some questions. And I need you to be completely honest. Anything. Are you connected to organized crime?" Vincenzo met her eyes steadily. "My grandfather was. He ran a network that controlled shipping and imports in the New York area. When he died, my father tried to go legitimate, to build legal businesses using the foundation my grandfather provided. He was partially successful. When I took over, I continued that transition. 90% of what I do is completely legal, profitable, and above board. And the other 10%? Protection, logistics, information brokerage, gray areas that aren't exactly illegal, but wouldn't hold up to intense scrutiny. I don't traffic in drugs, weapons, or people. I don't engage in violence except in self-defense or protection of my interests. But I exist in a world where the old rules still apply, where men like Dimitri test boundaries, and where reputation matters as much as reality." Sam absorbed this, appreciating his honesty even as it confirmed her fears. "What happens to Dimitri? He'll disappear. Not killed, but relocated somewhere very far away where he can't threaten my people or my business. He'll live, but he'll never come back to New York." "That's still kidnapping." "Yes." Vincenzo didn't flinch from the word. "I'm not asking you to approve of my methods, Samantha. I'm asking if you can accept them, knowing that they exist to protect the people and things I care about. Including you." Sam stood and walked to the window, looking out at the grounds she'd come to know so well. Behind her, she heard Vincenzo stand too, though he didn't approach. "If I stay," Sam said slowly, "if I choose this, I need terms. Name them. I won't be hidden or protected from the truth. If there's danger, I need to know about it. If you're dealing with situations like Dimitri, I need to understand the risks. I can't live in a gilded cage, protected by ignorance." "Agreed. I keep working, not just for you, but for Cooper and Associates and any other legitimate clients I choose. I build my own career, my own reputation. I'm not just Vincenzo Baldini's girlfriend or consultant or whatever label we use. I'm my own person. I wouldn't have it any other way. And if I'm going to be part of your world, I want to help with the legitimate businesses. I'm good at what I do, at organizing, negotiating, building systems. Let me help grow the parts of your empire that don't require moral gray areas." Vincenzo crossed the room and stood behind her, close enough that she could see his reflection in the window glass. "You want to reform me?" he said, but there was amusement in his voice. "I want to give you options. You said 90% of what you do is legitimate. Let's make that 95, then 98. Let's build something that you never have to hide or defend. And if I can't let go of the last 10%, Sam turned to face him, then I'll accept it, as long as you're honest with me. I'm not naive enough to think I can change who you fundamentally are, Vincenzo. But I'm stubborn enough to try to make the future better than the past." His hands came up to frame her face, gentle despite the violence she knew those same hands were capable of. "You're sure about this? Once you're in, once people know you're mine, there's no going back to your old life." "I know." Sam covered his hands with hers. "I'm terrified, but I'm also more certain about this than I've been about anything in years. You see me, Vincenzo. The real me, not who I'm trying to be or who I think I should be. And I see you too, all the complicated, dangerous, brilliant parts of you. So yes, I'm sure." He kissed her then, deep and claiming, a promise and a seal on the choice they'd both made. When they finally broke apart, Vincenzo rested his forehead against hers. "Welcome home, Samantha Reid." 3 months later, Sam stood in what had become her office in the east wing of the mansion, reviewing proposals for the expansion of Baldini Holdings' hospitality division. She'd hired a team of 3 to manage the event side of the business while she focused on the larger strategy, transforming Vincenzo's scattered legitimate interests into a cohesive empire. Jake and Monica visited once a month, always amazed by the scale of what Sam was building. Angela had made her peace with the situation after meeting Vincenzo and deciding he was terrifying, but weirdly perfect for you. Teresa had fully adopted Sam, teaching her Italian cooking on Sunday afternoons and offering commentary on everything from Sam's wardrobe choices to Vincenzo's tendency to work too late. Luca had become something like a friend, his initial guilt over the kidnapping fading into mutual respect as Sam proved she could handle the complexities of Vincenzo's world. And Vincenzo himself had opened parts of his business she'd never seen, letting her audit systems, interview associates, and slowly shift resources toward legal enterprises. It was working. The percentage of gray area business was down to 7% and dropping. Sam heard footsteps and looked up to find Vincenzo in her doorway, holding 2 wine glasses. "Time for the tasting," he said, echoing that first afternoon weeks ago. "The Cabernet for the November event, among other things." He set the glasses down and pulled a small velvet box from his pocket. "I need your opinion on this, too." Sam's heart stopped. Inside the box was a ring, a single diamond on a platinum band, elegant and perfect. "Before you panic," Vincenzo said quickly, "I'm not proposing, not yet. But I wanted you to see it, to tell me if it's right, if it's what you'd want when I do ask." Sam looked from the ring to his face, seeing nervousness there that made her love him even more. "It's perfect," she whispered. "And when you ask, the answer will be yes." Vincenzo's smile was incandescent. He closed the box and set it aside, pulling her into his arms. "I love you, Samantha Reid. You walked into my life insulting me and judging my clothes, and you've been turning everything upside down ever since. I love you too, even though you're manipulative, dangerous, and way too good at getting your way. That's why we work," he said, kissing her. "You keep me honest, and I keep you safe." Through the window, Sam could see the grounds of the estate stretching toward the forest, beautiful and isolated and home. She'd come here expecting a week of professional terror. Instead, she'd found partnership, purpose, and a love that was as complicated and real as anything she'd ever known. It wasn't the life she'd planned, but it was the life she'd chosen, and that made all the difference.